Hello and welcome to our April edition of Summit's Education Series. Tonight we're really excited to have our neighbors from up the street at the Washington State University. I almost got in trouble there, huh? The Washington State University Extension Services. We have Kylie Smith and Elena Ridatini. I am going to mess up your name, and I probably did. But Master Gardener and our small farms and noxious weed control people, with this beautiful weather, you are all thinking about your yards and getting your gardens together, and they are here to help you. So here they are. Go for it, ladies.
Okay, hi, I'm Elena Rigatini, and I just wanted to, tell you that I'm part of the Extension Master Gardener volunteer program. I'm program coordinator and Master Gardener. And just a little bit about myself, I was a Master Gardener since 2014. My family grew almost everything we ate when I was growing up, and when I left home, I wanted to learn more about growing fresh fruits and vegetables in each place that I lived. So when I moved to Pacific County in 2013, I enrolled in the Master Gardener training program. And I'm really excited to be able to share more ways to be successful when we're gardening here in the Pacific Northwest. Okay, move next. So you are here tonight because you wanted to plant a vegetable garden. During the past year, people have taken to gardening as a respite from all the stress due to the pandemic. And growing plants, as you know, is not only a wonderful hobby to pass the time, but it also has some excellent health benefits, including eating more healthy fruits and vegetables. And even if you've never gardened before, this evening you can learn the benefits of gardening in your home. Uh, so, if you're going to start the garden, let's do a little bit of planning. Do you want to have a garden in your yard? Do you want to have a container garden? And by the way, container gardening is best for places with limited spaces like porches and small yards. So everyone can have their own garden in their yard. Okay, next. Along with planning, we have some questions to ask, such as, who's going to be in charge of the gardening? Is it going to be your family? Or is it just going to be a few selected people? And that's going to determine how much you plant and how large your garden will be. And of course, if you're going to plant a garden, plant things that your family likes to eat. How do you want to use your produce? Are you going to eat it all? Are you going to share it? Are you going to can it or freeze it? This will help you decide how much you want to grow. What kind of space is available for your garden? Again, is it going to be in containers, or do you have a place in your yard that you can set up for a garden? And then I think more crucially, where is that water located to water your garden? Next. Okay, so now you've decided what you want to do, you've planned it. Now let's choose a garden site. Again, if depending on how many people are going to be helping you, and if this is your first time gardening, you might want to choose a smaller space like 10 by 10 feet. Again, or you can do containers, or you can do both. You want to find a location that's going to be close and easy for you to check on the plant growth and monitoring for insects and water and other types of things. And when you're deciding on where you put your garden, you want to consider how much sun it's going to get, how close it is, or how are you going to get the water there, and what kind of soil are you going to have. And once you decide what you like to eat, plant a few of each kind. Next, yeah, okay. Sun exposure is really important factor in growing your plants. Depending on what you grow, and the success is going to be dependent on how much sun your yard or your plants get. So again, look at your garden. Does it have southern exposure? Does it have just partial sun in the morning or the afternoon? or does it have very little, less than 4 hours of sun exposure? Next. And you can see from this slide, if you want to grow sun-loving plants like tomatoes or squash or beans or strawberries, you're going to need 6 to 8 hours of direct sun daily. However, if you only have morning or afternoon sun, you can grow root plants like carrots. You can grow cool weather crops. We call them that because they don't need so much sun. And if you only have a little bit of sun, you can still grow lettuce and kale and spinach and other herbs in that amount of sun also. Next. Okay, big question. How are we going to irrigate these plants? Drip irrigation is probably a good way to do it if you have the time to set up the little tubes and the emitters that go to each plant. The nice thing about drip irrigation is with either a soaker hose or with tubes, as the water goes directly to the root zone, okay? It's a very efficient way of irrigating and it saves water. The only downside is that dirt will sometimes get into the emitters, and so you have to have some sort of a filtration system or wash them, with pressure water every once in a while. Overhead sprinkling is very popular. Now you can actually get the exact amount of water that you need to apply using timers and direct sprinklers in a particular area so that the water goes on the plants. However, you are using more water because you're watering the entire garden, including the soil, and sometimes, depending on the plant, they are vulnerable to leaf blight and other diseases because the water stays on the leaves. Next. This is fun. I love doing this with kids. It's important to find out what your soil texture is. Is it clay, like in my area? Is it sandy, like on the beaches? Or is it loamy, which is sort of a mixture of clay and sand? And that's pretty good soil. One of the things that I do is when I go out to a site is I water the soil, let it stay overnight, and then the next day I dig up a handful of soil and I squeeze it. If water comes out of it, then that means that it's clay. And it means that it's not going to drain very well. And so you're going to need to add organic matter or compost to improve the drainage. You can also use raised beds, which we're going to talk about later on. If the soil hasn't formed a ball and it falls apart, it's too sandy. So again, you're going to have to add compost or organic matter to improve the drainage or to help the soil absorb water and retain water better, or use raised beds. And of course, the third one is if it forms a ball and breaks into crumbs when poked, then you've got pretty good soil. Another test that's good to do is a pH soil test. You can get these kits at nurseries or garden stores, and you want to have 6.5 to 7 range is optimal. So if it's too acidic, you add some nutrients. If it's too alkaline, you add nutrients too. And then, excuse me, the reason we use compost or organic soil, of course, is either to improve the water retention, to improve drainage, and then just to include the nutrients that your plants are going to need. If you're starting a new garden and you've never planted it before, you might want to add 1 to 3 inches of organic soil amendment to the soil and then dig it in, mix it up for about a depth of 6 to 8 inches. And that way you'll have a good start on good soil. Okay, next. Okay, you can either plant your crops with seeds or with transplants. And we're going to talk a little bit about seeds first. One of the things that I found out when I came here was the soil has to be at least 50 degrees in order to start seeds outside. And in our climate, we don't get 50 degrees or more until May. So we recommend that you wait until at least May to start planting your seeds outside. And what I use is a cooking thermometer. As long as it goes down to 50 degrees, I stick it in the ground, wait for a minute, and then pull it out, and it'll tell me whether my soil is 50 degrees or more, or if it's left. And that determines when I go out and plant my seeds. And read the back of the package. There's so much information on it. It'll tell you how long it takes the seeds to germinate. It'll tell you what kind of soil drainage, sun requirements, how many days to maturity. And again, if it says 67 days to maturity, it's talking about 67 days at the proper soil temperature. So just be aware of that. There's also, I have several handouts or websites on the handout that I have that you can get. And one of the things that it includes is a table of all the cities in Grays Harbor and Pacific County that show the last spring frost date and the first frost date in the fall. So you can use that as a general idea. But even though it says at Aberdeen you can plant seeds April 30th, I would generally wait until the first week of May. And you can now find seeds for our short growing season. So you want to look at seeds that have the shortest days, because that means if you plant the seeds and they grow to maturity and it's 67 days, you want to make sure that they will provide harvest before the fall frost hits. Okay, next. Okay, again, you're looking at whether to use seeds or plant starts that you buy in the stores or plant starts that you grow from seeds indoors. And notice that some plants don't transplant well. So you have to start the seeds in the soil or in the soil basically, because when they move from indoors to outdoors, they don't always survive. You may also find that if you're growing squash, maybe the growing season isn't long enough. So you might want to buy those transplants in stores. Any questions so far? Okay, let's go to the next slide. This is pretty self-explanatory. Whenever you have a new seedlings or you're sprouting seeds, you have to make sure the soil stays damp. And then when they get established, do deep watering. You can feel down into the soil 3 or 4 inches and see if it's getting dry, and do deep watering because that allows the roots to grow deeper, be stronger, and also helps the plant to access nutrients. But I found that even when it rains, I'll go out and depending on the soil, my rain water often doesn't sink into the soil. And so I have to check and see 3 or 4 inches down if the soil is dry or if it really did absorb the water. Next. Okay, I want to share different layouts that you can use to plant a garden. There's not just one way like the row gardens on the second photo. There's all sorts of different ways to plant a garden and take advantage of your plot. One way is to do intercropping. It's called intercropping of plants. And you can see in the first photo, there's lettuce in the middle, and then they've grown onions on either side. To plant multiple plants in a small space. Here are plants that have different heights or different growing. Fast maturing lettuce will grow in between onions and they won't compete for space. Another thing you can do is carrots with radishes. Radishes are fast growing. Carrots will grow later, slower. One of the things that I thought was interesting is you can plant basil and tomatoes or asparagus, and that way, again, you're getting multiple different heights and different growth rates. And the airflow that you get between the plants of different, when you grow them different heights, the airflow will help to reduce fungi and other diseases, and they won't just sit in the water so much. The air will dry them out. In the second picture, that's our row garden, which is pretty traditional. It's easy to set up a drip watering there. You just, go down the lines and put the little emitters on either side. But make sure when you plant this kind of garden that it's not too wide, because you want to easily access the plants, get to the plants in the middle without compacting the soil with your feet. So make sure you don't make it too wide. Next, we talked a little bit about raised beds earlier. One of the advantages of raised beds is that you get better control over the soil that you put in there, and the soil warms faster because it's higher up off the ground. You can make your beds, the walls, about 1 to 2 feet tall, probably no more than that. And that really helps people who have trouble getting down on the ground to access the plants. And, it also, you might have less weeds based on the soil you use, and you can plant them anywhere. So on the left-hand side are just general raised beds. On the right-hand photo, you see a combination again. You have a trellis, which you can easily grow, climbing plants like peas or cucumbers or beans. And then in the rest of the box, raised bed, you can take advantage of planting lettuce there, or herbs, or maybe even carrots, because they don't need so much room. So that's sort of a way of intercropping, but with raised beds. Okay, next. This is called square foot gardening, and a lot of people have found success with it. Basically, it's a raised bed. It's 4 by 4 feet, and you divide it into 16 different areas. Hence the square foot, 1 by 1 foot little squares. And you can plant different crops in each one of those squares depending on their size. So, for example, you can plant 1 square with 1 tomato, but then radishes are smaller, so you can plant up to 16 radishes or 9 carrots. And then if you want to, you can still add the trellis at the end to grow climbing plants in that last row. So it's kind of interesting. Next. This is something that I just learned about. It's called keyhole gardening. And basically you use a raised bed, but it can be circular or square. And it makes it easier oftentimes to reach the whole bed. And the difference is that there's a compost basket made of rolled chicken wire, and you place it in the center of the keyhole garden, and then you add soil around the rest of it. And you add composted organic soil to it. And then when you're watering, you pour the water into the compost bin there, and it fertilizes the plants or provides nutrients while you're watering at the same time. I haven't had experience with that, but it looks promising. Next. Okay, so you've been tending your plants and suddenly you're seeing fungi or pests or diseases, or your plants aren't growing as well as you thought they should, or you notice things that don't look right. You can always ask a master gardener. We have a website called PNWMG, which stands for Pacific Northwest Master Gardeners.org. You just type in your question and a master gardener will get back to you. Or you can call your Grays Harbor County Extension Office in Elma. And there's the phone number right there. And you will either get an answer right then, or whoever answers the phone will contact us and we will get back to you with an answer to your question. Okay, the last slide. When you harvest your veggies, there's lots of different things that you can do. Your veggies can be harvested multiple times depending on how you planted them. You might want to plant series of seeds. So you might plant your lettuce seeds and then a couple weeks later plant some more lettuce seeds, or you might want to do the same thing with tomatoes or with peas, and you can harvest your vegetables throughout the summer as soon as they start to mature. Leaf lettuce, continues to grow even after you've cut some of the young leaves. And so I've done that, leave part of the stem, and then they just keep growing. So I have lettuce all summer long. And even zucchini and cucumbers can be harvested. I like zucchini better when the fruit is just a few inches long. It's more tender. And oftentimes, the more you harvest, the more you pick the vegetables, the more the plant will produce. So if it looks good enough to eat, it probably is. Next. Okay. I just wanted to add that on this list of websites that I've included on the handout, the very first website is called Home Vegetable Gardening in Washington, and it's a WSU publication. And it goes through in much more detail all the things that I've covered tonight. There's also other selected websites that give you more information on square foot gardening and keyhole gardening and raised beds. And like I said, other types of questions. So there's a lot of material that you can reference. But do you have any questions tonight for me? Okay.
Elena, if you want to have pickling cukes, how often do you have to harvest your cucumbers?
I think they probably when they get to be about 4 inches long, because if they get too big, it's going to be hard to use and they might be over the hill. And that's another one of those veggies that the more you harvest them, the more they grow and produce.
Yes, and you want those little tiny ones. You got to stay on them.
Yeah. That's why you want your garden close to where you can see it.
Yes, definitely. Easier the better.
Yes. Okay, I guess, Kylie, you're on.
All right. Well, hello out there. And I am Kylie Smith, and I'm the WSU Extension Small Farms and the Noxious Weed Coordinator. I've been the Small Farms Coordinator for, I think I'm going on my 5th year now. And it's a great place to work, and I work with a lot of farmers. And so I want to chat with you guys today. Go ahead, Cindy, with the next slide. About I always encourage everybody to grow a garden, and my background is in farming. I farmed for 8 years, and I raised produce, and I did CSAs, and sold to restaurants and did that whole thing, and worked in markets and managed markets, and then and I also did livestock, raised beef, pork, poultry, all the things, and then I transitioned into more just a home little garden. But I found my new location where I live, I can't grow a huge garden. It's not, the sun isn't right here. And so I love also purchasing from local farms in the area that are going to grow a wide variety of stuff that I don't have access to. And so I love doing this talk to educate people on food that's abundant through the Pacific Northwest all year long, but it's important to understand what's available, when it's available, and where you can get it from. So that's what we're going to talk about today, is eating seasonally and locally in Grays Harbor by accessing your local farms. So go ahead with the next slide. So the first subject I want to talk about is the food that's you can generally get all year round. That's going to be your meat, seafood, eggs, honey, and dairy. You can basically find these products all throughout the year. And I'm going to go in more depth today about veggies and where to get those around here and what's in season when. But I want to do a quick rundown that if you are interested in the meat, seafood, and eggs, and honey, where you might be able to access those things. So we do have several meat farms or livestock operations here in Grays Harbor County. So we have several beef, pork, chicken, you can get duck, buffalo even. And the thing with that, there's actually a high demand for it right now. Because of the circumstances in the last year, there's been a lot of shift in where people want to access their food and find their food. And so there's a high demand, which is great for local farms, but it also means that you want to plan ahead when you're going to be buying local meat. So you definitely want to first, decide what you want and what kind of meat you want, and then you need to call around to find out what availability is. And when it comes to buying directly from a local farm, what you have to understand is that there's two different ways to buy. So if you go to, let's say, Olympia Farmers Market and you just want to buy one package of meat, you can do that at that farmer's market because that farmer has gotten certified through the USDA. And a lot of our farms around here are WSDA certified. So that's Washington State Department of Agriculture certified. And what that means for the consumer is that when you buy meat directly from the farmer, that certified WSDA, you have to buy a quarter, a half, or a whole animal from them. So that means that you do need to plan. You need to maybe have go and get a small freezer or clear out some freezer space to be able to accommodate buying that, or find some friends and family to go in on half a beef with you. So that's something that you have to consider when buying from local farmers. Now, seafood, how lucky are we that we live on the harbor and we have fresh, yummy seafood? And so we have several little markets and Brady's oysters, Lidl's, Marino's, Nelson's, Breakwater even. So lots of little seafood places. It's great to just go get it off the dock. If you're ever interested in canning your own tuna or canning your own fish in any way, look into the extension office. We are happy to teach people and walk you through the proper way to process that. And one thing to be aware of is that sometimes these little shops, they can have, they might have the local oysters, but they might have shrimp that's from far away. So just make sure that if you want to buy some local seafood and you're in the shops, just making sure that, you're finding out which one's coming right off of, Westport or Ocean Shores, or, where's it really coming from? But most of the time it is right off our docks. So that's that. And then when it comes to eggs, a couple of things to know about eggs is there's lots of eggs around. Lots of people have eggs, but you will find less fresh farm eggs in the stores. Sometimes you'll see them in the little markets and whatnot, but it's easier to find them just right off the farm. And there's a reason for that. Farmers who sell eggs, there's no permitting or licensing when you're selling off the farm. So you have eggs, you can just put up a sign and say, come get them for $3 a carton. But if you're going to sell them off the farm, then you have to go through an egg handler's permit and licensing and permitting through the Department of Ag. So just look around, keep an eye out, get on some forums like Facebook forums to see who's got eggs, or just take a look around when you're driving about. If you see some signs up, and that's sometimes the best way to do it. And then when the stores, in the little stores, little markets, just look for those local fresh eggs. Honey, yes, we do have honey around here, and those are all, you're going to find your local honey either at the farmers markets or those little mom and pop markets that are around town. And then dairy. I do have to get the rundown real quick on dairy. We do have just a couple dairies that are holding out here in Grace Harbor, but they're great dairies, but they are bigger dairies or part of larger co-ops. And so they're going to be selling their milk to Dairy Gold, or Organic Valley, or independent, but they don't necessarily just sell dairy directly to consumer. So we do have several dairies that are in surrounding counties, though. There's small cheese, raw milk, goat milk, all kinds of different products, yogurt, that are in surrounding counties, even as close as Rochester. So you can find some of the neighboring counties' dairy in the small local markets, but otherwise you do have to kind of just go out to, it could be Rochester, Thurston County, Lewis County, and pick up some local dairy out there. So that's the rundown on those ones. Let's jump into the veggies. Go ahead. Next slide. Cindy, next slide. Just trying. Okay, well, I guess I'll just start talking about it. So this is the time of year, right? Everybody's kind of getting excited to get started, thinking about fruits and veggies, and getting anxious for that, the fresh stuff. Either grow it yourself or just start seeing it. And so we're going to talk about what's in season, when's it's in season, where to find it. First, Elena did a great presentation on how to get started on your own little garden. And I did want to shout out to the small nurseries that are around town. So if you want to, if you need some soil, you need a little bit more advice or amendments, or you want to just go buy some plant starts and have one of those instant gardens, which sometimes it's just easy to go buy those plant starts and voila, garden. So highlight some of the local nurseries: Wendichi Windmill Farm, Marshall, Satsup, Landscape and Nursery, Garden Stars Nursery in Elma, Cindy's Plant Stand in Elma, and Jules Unique Nursery. So it's always great to, I know it's convenient to grab those plants from Home Depot or Rite Aid or Walmart or whatever, but sometimes it's just super sweet to go out to the local nurseries and turn it into an experience to go out there and get those plants and support local farms. So go ahead, next. So we are already into spring, and this is when we're gonna start to see some veggies coming in and getting available. It's very, at this point, if you do see any, it's going to be very, very limited. Maybe some microgreens going on, but what is more important right now to start thinking about is on whether or not you want to start your own garden, or if you want to commit to signing up for a CSA. And a CSA is a really important thing to know about. CSA stands for Community Supported Agriculture. So this is a program that supports local farmers by consumers, or we would commit to purchasing from a farm. And what normally you would give a lump sum at the very beginning of the year that basically purchases your veggies throughout the growing season. And then the farm will deliver, or you can pick up from the farm or from a drop site your box of fresh veggies that is ready to go that week for the rest of the growing season. Each farm is different, how long the CSA lasts, how much it might cost. Some people do ask for that lump sum up front, but also people are getting a little bit more creative with their purchasing process. Either they have sliding scale or they say pay as you go and all kinds of things. What's great about these farmers is that they just want to make sure that everybody's got fresh veggies available. And so if you reach out to them, they are going to work with you. They'll find out, what works for you. What's, how can we make this work? That's why they're farming, is to make sure that people who want fresh veggies are getting fresh veggies. So we have a few local CSAs here on the harbor. And now we are getting to that point that some of them are still signing up. Some of them might be already at the point where they might not be taking any more customers. But I think at this point, we're pretty good to go with our local farms in signing up. So Sky Island Farm, Out the Hump Tulips. We got Harbor Roots Farm, which is in Montesano. La Best Farms is a new farm out in Hump Tulips. Bunkhouse Acres is a new farm out in Matlock. The Organic Farm is in Elma. He's on his second year CSA. And then we do have, I did want to mention 2 other farms that are just outside. Rising River is technically in our county, but they're a little bit out of our, both Rising River and Helsing Junction are in the Independence Valley out in Rochester. So they are a little bit further, but I do believe they have drop sites in Grays Harbor. So I just wanted to, that those farms do deliver down here. And yes, those are bigger farms out in Independence Valley. So I highly encourage people to sign up for a CSA. It's super fun. It's really, really the best way to support local farms too. So check them out. I will tell you guys a little bit more how to find these farms in just a little bit. So go ahead with the next slide. So here we are. We're in April. And what you're going to see, if you see some local veggies in the stores or might be available, are going to be greens, if anything. Maybe some spinach, radish greens. Arugula is one of the first ones to come up. And this is the time where my mouth starts watering. It's not quite here yet, but I'm always looking for it, is that asparagus might be coming in at the very end of April. So if it's a good early year, we might see it at the end of April. And that's going to be coming from Eastern Washington. Sometimes at this time of year, you'll see, asparagus, it's ready. But make sure it's got from Washington, because sometimes they'll like to trick you, and it could be, still the same asparagus that we get from Mexico all throughout the rest of the year. So just making sure that we'll look out for that Washington label. Go ahead with the next slide. Next month, that's when we'll start seeing some good stuff, some more interesting stuff that'll be fun to cook with and really kick off the year. So we'll see some rhubarb, radishes are going to be coming in, more greens for sure, chives, maybe some bok choy if somebody's growing bok choy, but that is a cold weather crop that you might be seeing. Maybe some parsley, and that's when that first big crop of asparagus. Asparagus is like the kickoff of the year for me. So next slide. Okay, and then we get into June, and June is when you can start looking for some of the berries coming in, right? That's when we start to see the Spooners stands popping up, and we start seeing people and farms start bringing in berries to the farmers markets and whatnot. And we might even see some of the Eastern Washington, the Yakima, Chelan cherries coming in at that time too. And then of course we'll start to see some of the herbs and everything too coming in. But also this is a big month for a lot of veggie crops to start. So next slide. This is when you will start seeing a lot more variety, of course, as we progressed into summer. Lettuce and spring onions, peas, that's snap peas, snow peas, my favorite, spinach, summer squash. Might see some summer squash. It's going to get started right then. Turnips for sure. Of course, always lots of greens. You know, when I say greens, I mean like, of course, your lettuce, but mostly like kale, collards, some of those hardier greens that are going to be really good for you. And I always say that it's good to eat a lot of greens right at the beginning of spring, because it kind of kickstarts your body out of the slow digestion of meat and potatoes throughout the whole winter kind of thing. You know, get some greens in there, get your body going. We'll start to see some carrots and cabbages, beets and broccoli and all kinds of stuff. And you're going to start seeing those in those little markets, but also at the farmers markets, of course. Cindy, I might have lost my slides. So yeah, in June, that's when we'll start seeing a lot of the stuff. And your own stuff will start really coming in too. And that's when you can start thinking about, that's when the Kickstarter of the farmers markets really starts getting going too. And I'll give you the rundown on where all the farmers markets in town are here in just a little bit. But I guess one thing that why I think it's important to learn what's available, when it's available throughout the years, because for me, when I talk about that asparagus, it's kind of like the kickstart of the year. But it gives me something to really look forward to when I'm specifically looking forward to that Washington asparagus, you know, or when I know that, when the spring turnips come in from the local farms, and, you know, I know, you know, that those things come at this time of year, and it gets me really excited for that time of year and to stick with it, because, and I know that when you're eating it from a local farm or just in general when it's in season, and that it might be, you know, a farm from over in Eastern Washington, and that's for me, Washington's local. So because that's what tastes the best when it's in season. You know, you take have you ever had a nectarine in the middle of winter from somewhere else? It just doesn't have the same appeal, right? It's when you eat the fruits and veggies in season that are close to you, you know, they keep the nutrient value when they're harvested and directly to the consumer within a day or 2 days. They keep the nutrient value, the taste, and it's just so much better. And so when you're in tune with what's going on throughout the year, it's a little extra excitement in your life to get excited for those things when they're coming in, right? So go ahead with the next slide. Oh, we're in July. Never mind. I haven't talked about July yet. Sorry. So July is when some of the hot crops are going to come in or getting started. We're in full swing. This is the start of canning season, I like to say. Green beans are in. You're going to find your pickling cukes. Start doing your pickling beets and carrots and all those fun stuff. But also, this is when you're going to start to see the tomatoes are going to start coming in. There's going to be zucchini up the yin yang. Can't get away from it. It's going to be everywhere. We'll see some basil, and then some of the cool things like lavender is going to be in bloom, and we'll check out the lavender farm, Dale's Lavender Valley out towards Capelas. She's always a great place to stop during this time of year. Okay, go ahead with the next slide. Okay, so I have this slide up here because one of the best things about having a CSA or buying local veggies is that you get to try some really cool stuff that you don't normally see, like in the store, or that that you have no idea what it is. Now, not all these things that you see on here you might not get in a CSA, but there's so many interesting, cool veggies out there to try that I wanted to bring this slide up here because this is one of my favorite ones to highlight some of the weird stuff that you might see. Normally when I do this, I usually do a little pop quiz. But since I don't see, I can't really do a pop quiz, I'm just going to take a notice, see how many of these vegetables that you know, and I'll go ahead and go through them by the numbers. So the number 1, we got fiddlehead ferns. Number 2, we have radicchio. Number 3, we have mizuna. Number 4, we have a Chinese eggplant. Number 5, we have the ground cherries. Number 6, we got the lemon cucumbers. Number 7, we have oca. Number 8, we have celeriac. Number 9, we have garlic scapes. 10 is Jerusalem artichokes. 11 is fava beans. 12 is kohlrabi. 13 is black radish, and 14 is the watermelon radish. And sometimes when you get these in your box, of your CSA box, you're like, what is this and what do I do with it? But that's what keeps life interesting. You learn more about it, you learn how to cook with it, look up some new recipes, and it can be just a new great experience. Sorry, I have a dog that is really wanting to play. Go with the next slide. So again, I've already mentioned a little bit about Eastern Washington fruit, but this is when the Eastern Washington really is in full swing, and the best place to find Eastern Washington fruit is at some of the local small markets that are around town, like Jay's or Franco's Farm Stand, the Marketplace, Organic 101, Elma Farm Stand, all these little guys, a lot of times they bring in that directly from Eastern Washington over, and you can get it. And it's super fresh, super yummy. Looking for the Hermiston watermelons that are always really amazing. So this is the best time of year. And yes, sometimes they get clumped in with the fruit that might be coming from far, far away. But you can't beat Washington or Eastern Washington fresh stone fruit and melons and whatnot. So this is the time to dive into that as well. Go ahead with the next slide. Okay, so here's the rundown on some of the farmers markets. Montesano has a farmers market, and they're going to be starting up July 10th through August 26th, and on Saturdays from 9 a.m. to 1 p.m. And then the Aberdeen Sunday Market, I know has several farms signed up this year. They're going to be starting May 16th from 10 a.m. to 3 p.m. And then there might be a couple other, or 1 or 2 others on the horizon that are trying to get started. So farmers markets are really picking up in popularity, and we're going to start seeing them around a lot more often. So go and check out one of our local ones. And then when you're out of town, it's just such a great thing to go visit and take a look at what other counties have to offer and what's going on. The Olympia Farmers Market's always great. I think they're Thursday through Sunday. Tumwater, Shelton, and Chehalis all have really great farmers markets to go check out. And next slide. In August, this is the hot season. So this is when we're even going to start to see you're going to see your corn, peppers, lots of tomatoes, all your squash, lots and lots of cucumbers and apples are coming into some of the earlier varieties you're going to start seeing. And then you're full-fledged of all the other great veggies like carrots and cabbage and broccoli and beets and cauliflower and celery. And this is just a great time of year to just to get to cooking, get to canning, and get to some great eating, right? So yeah, this is August. And next slide. And then we get into one of my favorite times of the year around here in fall. We have some great farms to visit, and I just wanted to highlight some of the agritourism farms that are around here. We have Chapman Farms with the pumpkin patch and corn mazes, as well as Schaffner Farms. Same thing, some great activities with the kids. Luby's Farms, yeah, I always go out and make sure I get those yellowfin potatoes every year. Super yummy, hold well. Always have a bag of those. And then also, I love to take a trip in the fall to go out to Grayland or the little neighborhood up on the North Shore to see the cranberry bogs. Just every year, it's just so pretty to go out there and see the cranberry bogs in the fall. So yes, definitely visit some farms this fall. And then in September, again, we're in full swing. But we're also going to see some cool stuff like potatoes at this time of year, lots and lots of corn. Your garlic's going to be in, your hot peppers are going to be in. You'll even start to see some Brussels sprouts, and tomatillos, and parsnips. That's one that comes a little bit later. And then this is that time of year where so many different apples, so many different varieties, pears, Asian pears, artichokes are into, but those tree fruit is in season. So yes, the apples and the pears around here are amazing. So that's September. And go ahead with the next slide. October. So this is the time of year where you want to start thinking about stocking up for the winter. Like I said, I always go to Luby Farms and stock up on my potatoes for the year. So stocking up on some good keepers of apples. And if you want to keep apples, you want to keep them in a cool, dark place, like a basement that keeps pretty cool. And also there's certain varieties that are better for keeping than others. So make sure when you go to the markets, talk to them about, where's your keepers at? Where's your apples that are going to stay for the next couple months. And then we also are getting into our winter squash. And winter squash is another thing that you can stock up on that's going to stay for the next several months in your pantry or in your garage or whatever. And parsnips, onions, leeks, and potatoes this time of year. So stocking up for winter. Next slide. Okay, so during the winter time, you've stocked up on some of those root veggies, and those are great. But through the winter, some of the things that you're going to be able to see a lot of, or that really extend into the winter, are the chard and the kale and the collards, and then those root crops. They can even stay in the ground if you have your own garden for quite some time, and just pull them out as you need them. And then as for what you might be seeing in the stores that are through the winter, a lot of farms will have a large stock and are keeping their own winter squash and some of those greens and root crops. And so they can kind of keep selling them through the winter. But others, some farms are growing microgreens, and you can see some microgreens in the winter time too. So that's winter time. But the being deprived of all those fresh veggies is what gets you super excited when spring comes around and summer to have that stuff back again, right? So, and go ahead with the next slide. So this is the rundown of produce farms. We have Schaffner's, Montesano, Harbor Roots, Montesano, Jewel's Unique Nursery up the Sats up, Chapman's Farm in Brady with those corn and pumpkins, Luby's Farm with potatoes, Sky Island is the produce farm out in Hump Tulips. We have Harbor Eden right in Aberdeen and their little produce farm. Be Organic is a organic produce farm in Elma. La Beste is a new produce farm out the Hump Tulips. Cultivating Roots is a sweet little farm out here in Aberdeen. And Bunkhouse Acres is another new one that's out in Matlock. So those are your produce farms. So how do we find the produce farms? Go ahead to the next slide. So that's where I wanted to talk to you guys about the Farm Fresh Guide. So the Farm Fresh Guide is a guide that we put out that lists all the farms and tells you what they have to offer and how to contact them, Facebook or a website, or give them a call, what they have available. And then also on the backside, it shows you a map of where all the farms are, so that if you want to take like a little farm tour yourself, planning ahead, it's not that it's kind of an awkward year for that, but you're always welcome to call ahead and see what the situation is. But this is going to be your go-to for local farms and finding out what's available. And this is where you're going to find all those, the livestock and meat farms, even the flower farms, Lily Lane out there in Westport, Dan's Dahlias, and the lavender out in Ocean Shores, towards Ocean Shores. So this is the place to find all the local farms. You can pick one of these up, the hard copies. So I try to get them around to various locations around Grace Harbor, so they're available. I'm just kickstarting getting them out there, but they are available at Summit Pacific, Organic 101, Elma Farm Stand. I do have them at the WSU Extension, but sometimes it can be hard to catch me, but you can make an appointment to try to pick some up. And I am getting them around right now to the local libraries. I know they're not all quite open yet and the times are a little off, but the local libraries will have some as well. And then if you're not getting out there, you're staying safe, you're staying at home, but you still want to find out how to get a hold of these farms, of course, you can go onto our website, and we do have it on our website under the agriculture tab. And the website, I have a link to it at the end here. So, and then for a wider database of farms, because we have great farms, and you can get almost everything you could possibly want or need here in Grace Harbor County. But there's also a lot of other really cool farms that have some unique products that you might want to try out, or you're looking for something special. You want to get, there's a CSA for goat cheese up in Olympia. If you want to check that out, you can go to WSU has partnered with Tilt Alliance and some of the other bigger organizations to develop eatlocalfirst.org. And there's a Washington Farm Finder there. And so you can check it out, and it has a huge list of farms and their products and how to find it and get a hold of those other farms. Also, the Community Farmland Trust puts out a map that is a really, really good, useful map that covers our region as well. So lots of ways to find the farms. Go ahead with the next slide. I did want to give a quick rundown so people are aware that the Aberdeen Sunday Market is going to be accepts SNAP and EBT benefits, and the market is going to match dollar for dollar with a $40 limit per market and an $80 limit total per card. But this is a super awesome opportunity and really great. And this is going to include the kids' PEBT, but they're not yet set up for the WIC card, but they're going to be able to accept and match the WIC and Senior Farmers Market Nutrition Program vouchers. It's kind of a lot, but you can learn more about what the Aberdeen Farmers Market benefit's going to entail by visiting the Aberdeen Sunday market.org to find out, or find them on Facebook. And they're always happy to give you the rundown of how their programs work. So the other programs that we have in Grace Harbor, we have a really cool one through Coastal Harvest, and that's the Farm to Food Pantry program. And we have, in the past, we've had a couple of different farms sign up and who work with Coastal Harvest to bring them veggies every single week through the summer. And then those fresh veggies are delivered to all the farm pantries, food pantries that are all throughout Grace Harbor. So you're getting fresh local veggies there, and that's great. So you can find a local food pantry near you. We have the food access map, and that's also on our extension website. It's through the Family Living Program, but it's on there, and it will show you where all the food pantries are. And lastly, to do with food access, we are having a bi-monthly meeting to talk about all the same stuff. Talk about what's in season, who's got what, who's hot right now, what's going on with the food system in Grays Harbor. And so we are opening it up to bring in people who are more interested in either getting involved in the food system or just want to learn more about how to contribute and to support local farms and strengthen our food system here in Grays Harbor. And so we're opening it up, and I'm setting up a listserv right now to invite people, and it's going to be every other month. We'll have a meeting that just has food system resource providers, farmers, and also people who are just involved, whether that be the farmers market or whatnot. So it's a great meeting. It's a great group of people ready to educate and just talk about produce, because we're a bunch of produce geeks. So, all right, next slide. Okay, that's it. So I know that was a lot of information, and I can talk all day about this stuff. So, and I'm always happy to. So feel free to email me or call me if you have any questions or you just want to chat about the food system. And if anybody has any questions right now, shoot them into the chat box and I will get back to you. Okay, well, thank you so much for listening to me and putting up with my crazy puppy around here trying to get me. So yes, thank you, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.